there's a lot of sex in this book. just putting that out there. Hey friends, I'm so glad you're here with me today. I recently finished reading The Lions of Al-Rassan by Guy Gavriel Kay. This is the third Guy Gavriel Kay book that I have read, and I really enjoyed his writing so far. The first book I read was Tigana, and the most recent book I read prior to this was A Song for Arbonne, and I absolutely loved that one. It's probably one of my favorite books of all time. So I had high hopes going into The Lions of Al-Rassan, and it was good. It wasn't great for me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences with it, but first I want to give you a little bit of an overview on the book, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons. And I do have something I'm neutral on, and we'll talk about that as well. That's a first for me in a book review, I think. So, The Lions of Al-Rassan is a historical fiction epic set in an alternate medieval Spain. So Guy Gavriel Kay is well known for taking real-world settings and putting them in an alternate world that's very similar and telling a new story, or retelling the story with a few twists and turns. And sometimes those have fantasy elements, so he does write historical fantasy. There are a few fantasy elements in this, but they're very minor and hardly even noticeable. So that's why I'm saying this is mostly just a historical fiction. And it tells the story of three main characters. So there's three main POVs in this story. There are a few other POVs, but again, they're very minor. You're mostly focusing on these three characters. And those characters are Rodrigo Belmonte, who is a Jadite captain, and Jehane Bet Ishaq, or Johanna. I'm not sure how her name is pronounced, to be perfectly honest with you. But she is a Kindath physician. And then you have Amar Ibn Karen, who is a mercenary of sorts, but has also been a tutor for the reigning king in the kingdom of Cartada in this world. And he is an Asherite. And so just to give you a little bit of a picture of what these three different groups are, the Kindath are a reimagining of the Jews of medieval Spain. The Asherites are a reimagining of the Muslim Moors of medieval Spain. And then the Jadites would be the Christians or Catholics of medieval Spain. And so you can imagine the cultural tensions that are weighing against each other in this world as we follow these three main characters, each from those different groups of people. The majority of the book is spent focused on these three characters. There are a few side characters that get thrown into the mix, a couple of other POVs that show up later, but for the most part, you're only following these three people. And the book starts off with a major execution carried out by the current reigning king of Cartada. He's an Asherite king, and he conducts an execution of dozens of people. And as a result, the rest of that area and pretty much this entire realm is thrown into chaos. Tensions are high, people start questioning loyalties and going into exile, and we follow Jehane, Amar, and Rodrigo as they meet each other and then eventually end up going into exile to the same place. And I will say, for the most part, I really enjoyed these characters. They had some great communication together, some great banter, lots of witty humor in this story, and some romance as well. And I just thought the three characters that we follow are pretty interesting for the most part. And while I enjoyed getting to know these characters and found their stories somewhat interesting, they weren't really well fleshed out, I didn't feel like. And I guess that's where I'll get into the pros and cons now. So first, let's talk about the pros. I really enjoyed being in this world. I've always found the medieval era fascinating, so I really enjoyed seeing all the cultural backdrops and the setting of the world that this was taking place in. And of course, I mostly enjoyed following Rodrigo and Amar and Jahane. I think Jahane is probably my favorite character of the three, but I didn't really feel like I knew those characters very well. Even by the end of the book, I felt really distanced from them. And I'm a really character-driven reader, but I enjoyed them for the most part. It was a good story that was told. I liked the ending pretty well. And so I do think that this book has some good things going for it. I'll get to the cons in a minute, but I did want to talk about something that I am neutral on. So this was a buddy read that I did with my friend Fina over at Fina Reads, and also Kate at Kate Coy, and Ian the Reader. And Fina had commented in her video that this is a very horny book. And it is. That is a very good way to describe it, because there is a lot of sex in this book. And that doesn't bother me at all. Not at all. I thought it was fine. I thought it added to the story. I thought it was a fun interlude from some of the more heavy and stressful moments of the book from a character perspective. And so when you live in a world like they do, really the only things that you do in life are eat, sleep, work, and have sex. I mean, let's be honest. So that didn't bother me at all. I thought that part was fine, but it might bother other people. And so I wanted to state that up front as more of a neutral thing that you should probably know about this book before you get into it and read the book. Because if you are bothered by a lot of sex in books, there's a lot of sex in this book. just putting that out there. But I laughed so hard when Fina said that, because it is a very horny book. But hey, more power to them. I'm cheering on the characters, enjoying their relationships, and it was all good. So now let's talk about the cons. And there were some pretty big cons for me on this book. One of the things I really didn't like is that it did a whole lot more telling than it did showing. So you are told about a lot of the thoughts that are going on in characters' heads. This is not really a dialogue-heavy book. There's a lot of inner monologues in characters' heads, and there's a lot of telling what the characters are thinking, but you don't see them talking to each other very much throughout the book. There are some sections where there's a lot of dialogue, but it's very sparse throughout the book. And I really enjoy some good dialogue in my books. It helps me get to know the characters better. It helps them to feel more real and authentic. And I just didn't get that with the story. Like I said, I like the characters, but I wish I could have known them better. And that's where character interactions come in. You get to know characters through their interactions with other characters. That's just the best way for that to happen, right? So I was a little bit bothered by that. It lessened the reading experience. And for a book that is centered around war between these different groups of people, you don't see a lot of battles. There's a few, but they're mostly skirmishes or duels between different characters. You don't really see the big battles. Like, one of the major goals of the Jadeite king, so that's the Christian king, is to reunite all of the different areas of this world back into one kingdom, because the kingdom has been split, and he wants to unify all these areas back into one kingdom of Esperania. And for that to be one of the major goals stated in this book, you don't see a lot of that. You're mostly just following these characters and their day-to-day lives. And so it was a little odd for me. Another thing that kind of bothered me was a major character only had a brief introduction in the earlier parts of the book, and then we get to focus on that character for a couple of chapters maybe at the end of the book. And I thought that character was kind of done a disservice and not really utilized to their full potential. So that was kind of a sticking point for me as well. And then there's just one other thing I think that bothered me, and that was that one major character, one of the leaders in this story, who seemed to be very prominent and would have a big role to play in the story, is later mentioned to have been killed. We just get an announcement that character was killed. And I'm like, okay, that was abrupt. We didn't even see it happen or find out how it happened, really. It just kind of happened. And I was a little bit disappointed by that. But overall, it was a fine story. It was good. I enjoyed the characters for the most part. The world was pretty interesting, I would say. But I definitely wouldn't reread this book, and I will probably read more Guy Gavriel Kay books, but now I'm going to be more cautious as I go into his books, because I think Tigana and A Song for Arban really set my expectations high, and then this just came in lower for me, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of disappointing. But I had fun reading the story. I had a great time doing the buddy read with my friends, and I'm really glad we got to do that. And I would love to hear from you in the comments below what you think. Have you read The Lions of Al-Rassan? Has it been a book you enjoyed? Have you been on the fence with it? Do you think you're still going to read it? I would love to hear from you in the comments below. And I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, make sure you read more books. I'll talk with you then.